So, good afternoon. Good afternoon. Today is Sunday. It's Sunday, right? In this sort of like gathering, it is there are time constraints. We have a very short time. So to go in detail, of the paths in general, and then specifically the tantric path, to go through them in detail would be a great challenge. So those of you who have interest, and if you have interest and if you want to learn this in greater detail, then I'm sure there will be opportunities in the future where you can learn this in more depth, So today I will just give a very sort of like a general or overview of the paths. So when we say path, it is always in the context of actualizing nirvana, actualizing liberation from samsara. So this is what we mean when we say the path, the path. Okay. So within the paths, there is the Mahayana path and the non-Mahayana path. In other words, actualizing nirvana primarily for oneself or for the sake of others. So there are two paths. And then within the path, the Mahayana path, the great vehicle, then again within that, then there is the Paramitayana, the perfection vehicle, and then of course the tantric vehicle, the tantric vehicle. And in the perfection vehicle, then the main components of this path would be, the conventional bodhicitta, motivated by that, and then in terms of practicing, in terms of engaging directly, then one engages on the path by way of the six perfections, by way of the six perfections, the six paramitas. So this is perfection vehicle. And then in the tantric vehicle, then one bases one's tantric practice on the sixth perfection, So the sixth perfection is still central, is the basis of tantric path, is the base of the tantric path, and then based on that, then one uses these other methods explained in the tantric sets, So based on the six perfections, based on the two bodhicittas and so forth. So it is important that when we look at these different paths, so like within the non-Mahayana path, then there is the hearer's path, and then the solitary realizer's path, right? So for each of these paths, then the subsequent or higher paths actually use the main practice of the lower paths. They all base their practice on that. So this is just one thing to keep in mind, and therefore that's why, in terms of the paths of the three persons, this is why we use the term paths that is common to the person of small capacity and middling capacity, So this is to show the importance that just because one sort of identifies oneself as a practitioner of the Mahayana path, that doesn't mean that one overlooks, the other paths, the preceding path, the lower paths, or the more basic path. It is important. I mean, on the contrary, then one actually has to base everything on top of that. So it would be, I think, conflicting to say for a Mahayana practitioner to actually sort of look down on the Hinayana, on the Hinayana path, because one has to base everything on those teachings, in order to actually develop a certain experience of the higher paths. One has to base everything on the more basic teachings. So this is very important. So this word tantra and then mantra, they are both synonymous. Mantra, man and traya. Man means mind and traya means protection. So it means to protect the mind from what we say ordinary perception and ordinary grasping, protecting the mind from these two ordinary mode of apprehending oneself and seeing oneself, perceiving oneself as ordinary beings. So this is a mantra is the mode for protecting oneself from that ordinary aspect, mantra. And then it can also mean that man, which means the mind that knows suchness or shunyata, emptiness, ultimate nature. And then traya means the method, because the method, it protects others from sufferings. Method is essentially what protects other beings from suffering. So like this. And then tantra means continuum, or to sort of weave. So continuum, and again it is explained in terms of the base and then the path and the fruit. So the base continuum would be the person who is practicing the tantric path, or it also can refer to the lineage, to the essence, to the Tathagata Garbha, to the Buddha nature. So like this. And then the path continuum would of course refer to the tantric path, which has the aspect of both wisdom and the method. And then again, the fruit continuum would be, I could say, the two kayas, the two kayas. So Dharmakaya and Rupakaya. Dharmakaya and Rupakaya. Dharma means, I think, something like phenomena, but there's actually, the longer word is, I think it's called Dharmatakaya. So this refers to basically the ultimate nature, right? So there is this understanding that Dharmakaya refers to the ultimate nature of omniscience, or ultimate nature in enlightenment. So, and then Rupakaya, Rupa means, I think, form body. So it means that as a result of Dharmakaya, then Dharmakaya is the basis for Rupakaya. You know, Dharmakaya is the basis of Rupakaya. Because of Dharmakaya, then Rupakaya is possible. You know, because of Dharmakaya, and how we perceive that is by way of the Rupakaya. You know, it's by the form. You know, it's by this form. So, if we cannot sort of see Dharmakaya directly, but only we can see its form, right? So this form is in the form of the enjoyment body, Sambhogakaya, and emanation body. Is it Nirmanakaya? Right? Nirmanakaya. So like this. And then this path is also called the effect vehicle. So here the effect refers to the four thorough purities. That is, these are referring to aspects of the Buddha or some aspects that within that enlightened state. So this refers to the Buddha's abode, the Buddha's body, and resources and deeds, right? So why it is called an effect vehicle is that the practitioner at the time of, on the path, at the time of meditating, meditation, one visualizes as if one already has an inconceivable mansion and divine companions and sacred articles and such potential or activities to purify the environment and its beings, right? So one is already enacting these aspects of the fruition stage, of the fruit, of the effect, right, which is Buddhahood. So this is why this part is also called the effect vehicle. So like this, and then also it's called the method vehicle, primarily from the viewpoint of utilizing the deity yoga, So this is the unique method of the tantric path, So deity yoga is meditating oneself as the deity, meditating oneself as the deity. And when one does that, one actually first, one has to come from a place of these two bodhicittas, the conventional bodhicitta and then the ultimate bodhicitta. This altruistic intention and then this knowledge of nature, knowledge of ultimate nature. And then primarily use this knowledge of nature, the wisdom that sees the suchness of phenomena, that is then transformed into the deity, that is transformed into the deity. So this is the unique feature, the unique method explained in the Tantras. So then within the Tantras, then there are 4 Tantras, beginning with Kriya Tantra, Chayuju, Kriya Tantra, Chaju, Juju, then Charya Tantra, and Yoga Tantra, and then Anuttara Yoga Tantra. This is the highest Yoga Tantra, Anuttara Yoga Tantra. And these four different teachings, the Buddha, in the form of, I could say, Vajradhara, gave these different sets of tantric teachings based on the capacity of the student, of the practitioner, of the yogi or yogini. And this capacity is explained from the viewpoint of how one is able to transform one's desire or the pleasure that is related to that desire into the path. So for someone who has, so these pleasures, as we say, the pleasures that arise from smiling or from gazing or from touching and then from union. So those different types of pleasures. So for each of the practitioner who is able to turn those relevant pleasures into the path, accordingly, then these four tantric sets of teachings were given. So when we were talking about the path continuum, so for the three lower tantric paths, then the yoga with signs and without signs, these are the main paths. And then for Anuttara Yoga Tantra, highest Yoga Tantra, then of course mainly the generation stage and then the completion stage. So like this. So I think like this, I will stop here with this. And then as many of you have taken the highest Yoga Tantra, and also not only highest Yoga Tantra, but I think for the other full-fledged empowerments, for the respective empowerments for each of the four tantric sets. During the initiation, in the initial phase, then there is this Sarvachitta Yoga, right? Sarvachitta Yoga, where one's conventional bodhicitta is then transformed into the white lotus, and one's knowledge of suchness is transformed into the five-pronged Vajra. This is very important. And I remember, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, in his teachings, would always emphasize this part, would emphasize this very much. And this is very important. It is a very important reminder of our tantric practice, that when we practice Tantra, that we don't sort of become too excited by all these different colorful things, colorful images, but rather we should always base everything on these two aspects of the path, the method and the wisdom. The method, wisdom, the method and the wisdom. So these two, without sort of emphasizing these two aspects, then it would be impossible to have a meaningful tantric practice, It would be impossible for one's tantric practice to bear fruit. So again, this is very important, to always go back to these two aspects, to go back to the essence, of the Mahayana, to go back to the essence of the tantric path, this method and the wisdom aspect. So like this, and then generally, for okay, then I will stop in, please. Please. And also, when we, those of us who are newcomers to, Tantra, then it is important that not to have too many expectations, not to have too many expectations from this practice, from the tantric practice, especially unrealistic ones, So not to have these too many expectations, but just simply, I think basing one's practice on the fundamentals, on the fundamental path, on the fundamental aspect. This is very important, because if one can base one's tantric practice on these two bodhicittas, on these two minds, on the method and the wisdom aspect of the path, then it doesn't matter if one commits some minor mistakes in the formalities, in the rites and so forth. If one sort of makes some minor mistakes, I don't think it's too serious, because as long as you get the basics right, then I think it's okay, it's okay. And anyhow, if out of practicing Tantra for many years, if one had always, always never had overlooked these two aspects of the path, conventional bodhicitta and ultimate bodhicitta, then I think even though the person might not have gained like high realizations or high feats that are explained in the Tantra, nevertheless the person would have still, I think, improved as a person, as a result of meditating on these two aspects, on these two very important fundamental aspects of our path, right? So it would not have been in vain all the time that one has spent practicing, right? So I think if we do it like this, then we would always have something to show, that there is always something, the foundation is good, the foundation is good. So this is just a reminder, yeah. And also, as we talked about before, secrecy is again important when it comes to one's tantric practice, also like retreat and so forth. It is, if possible, it is always better to not sort of tell anyone, or to tell less people as much as possible, right? It explains that, the 4 ways of actualizing the feats, the feats of Tantra, is that the first is Tebe Chirmedoba, so having unwavering faith, this is the first factor. And then Shiragwe Temezumba, so this is having without having no doubts, having no doubts. And then Tingin Zindemba, so then a stable concentration, a stable concentration, visualization. And then the 4th is, of course, secrecy, so keeping it secret. So these are the 4 factors for actualizing the feats. Okay, so at this point, maybe I thought I would do a formal reading of these 2 texts, the 3 principal aspects of the path and the foundation of all excellence, both by Jetsongava. So in Tibetan, of course. Right. Jizun Lama Namla Chanse Lo, Gewe Sorop Gyungi Ningbu Dun, Gese Tambon Namgi Nabenam, Genden Tadu Namgi Jongo de Chidar Nushin Dagi Shevarsha, Kanda Sibi de la Machashin, Tenjo Dun Jajir Zumbai, Gewa Gebe Lamla Yidumbi, Genden Teda Tavi Yigi New, Namda Niju Meber Sinzui, Dende Dunye Shive Tamela, Sila Kamba Yijan, Lujenam, Guni Chinju Toma Nijun Zel, Tenjurniaga Celo Lomeba Yila Kombi Sede Nanshe Do, Lende Milo Koyo Dongenam Yayan Sambi Chimen Nanshe Do, Tedar Kombi Koyo Punzola, Yimun Giji Zamia Migishin, Ninzin Kundu Tabo Dunyilu, Chonantesi Nijun Keba La, Nijun Tea Namda Semgigi, Simbamenda Lamen Chanjugi, Punzo Dewe Juru, Minjurwe, Lodenangu Chanju Semjo Ge, Shurao Chuo Shi Gungikir, Doga Legi Chingwan Tambio Dam, Danzin Jagi Tawe Bosu Sui, Mari Mimbe, Machin Guni Tip, Mumi Sibur Kishin Gewaru, Donge Sumgi Junje Mebarnar, Negab Dendra Jowe Manamgi, Nanzu Samne Semjo Gebar Zue, Nilu Tobe Sherab Medena, Nijun Chanju Semlo Komjejang, Sibe Zawa Jobar Minube, Tijir Dendra Tobe Tabla Be, Kanshi Konde Chönam Tamjegi, Gunde Namya Luwa Medonji, Mingwe Deso Kangi Gunshiba, Tene Sange Gebe Lamla Shu, Nawa Dendra Luwa Mebatan, Tomba Kenen Tewe Kohani, Chisi Sosor Nawa Tesidu Tadung Tobe Kompa Toba Me, Namshi Renjo Mebar, Jigjar Tu, Dendra Melu Tonga Zamnini, Nishi Yugi Zindang Gunjina, Tesetawe Jeba Zoba La, Shenyan Nawe Yuda Sewa Dang, Tombe Meda Session Tomba Ni, Yudan Debur Chawe Tsui Shena, Tanzin Tawe Chobar Minjuro, Tadar Lamgi Zo Namsungi, Nenam Rangi Chishin Tobese, Wemba Dendi Sunju Topkini, Dengi Domanido Dubshi Pochi. So this was the transmission of the three principal aspects, and now the foundation of all excellence. Yuanden Gungi Shiju Tenjinji, Sushin Temple Lamgi Zawar, Laboratory Beba Tomai, Cuba Chimbu Temple Chingi Lop, Lenjinebe, Teve Tensandi, Chindoniaga, Tunjin Shijurne, Ninzen Kundu, Ningbu Lembelo, Junche Member Kiora Chingi Lop, Luso Yawa Chui, Chubushi, Nurdu Chibi, Chiwa Tembada, Shiwe Jisu, Lutan Temashin, Kana Lende Chishin Tawal, Neba Tembo Nene, Nebe So, Tashin Tawa Namja Boana, Gezo Tada Jubur Chebala, Tado Padan Temple Chingi Lop, Chebe Mung Dungi Gungigo, Hide Mirosibe, Penzogi, Nimirine, Tabe Devala, Tuni Chimbo Kiora Chingi Lop, Namda Sambati, Tambai, Tenda Shishin Bayu, Chimbui, Dembe Zawa, Soso Tabala, Duba Nimbu Chebar Chingi Lop, Ranin Sizo, Longwan Chishindu, Maju Jova Gunjan Dendawa, Tone Jova Joya Kurgewe, Chanju Semjo Jombar Chingi Lop, Semzam Kejan, Sudum Namsumla, Kombamena, Chanju Minjubar, Labortone, Kese Dombal, Zumba Tabe Lover Chingi Lop, Lobe Yola, Yawa Shishiji, Yanda Dona, Tushin Jova, Shinel Hadon Sundo, Develam, Nudu Jula Kiora Chingi Lop, Tumo Namja, Nudu Chubana, Tawa Gungi, Choju Doji Te, Gezan Kiyu Jungo Tamba Ter, Dela Nudu Jubar Chingi Lop, Tezimudu Namni Tubishi, Namda Tamzi Domar Suan, Jama Mimbi, Neba Nijun, Sodan Dudu Suan Chingi Lop, Tene Jude Ningbu Rimningi, Nenam Chishin Done, Zumbai, Tunshin Ninju Chole, Miyewa, Tambi Sunshin Jubar Chingi Lop, Tedar Lamsan Dubi, Shinye, the Sushin Dubi, Tonan Shadinj, Chidanange, Podo Jobeso, Nyawar Shivar Chingi Labdus, Gewa Gunto, Yanda Lama, the Demi Chugi Bella Longish, Sadan Lamki, Yunde Rabzon, Doji Changi Koban, Yurto, Sho. Okay. And since we have time, maybe I will now read in English, as if you don't know English, okay? Three principal aspects of the path. Homage to the most venerable teachers. I will explain here to the best of my ability the essential points of all the scriptures of the conqueror, the path acclaimed by all excellent bodhisattvas, the gateway for fortunate ones aspiring for liberation. Those who are not attached to the joys of cyclic existence, who strive to make meaningful this life of leisure and opportunities, and who place their trust in the path that pleases the conquerors or fortunate ones, listen with an open heart. Without pure renunciation, there is no way to pacify the yearning for the joys and fruits of samsara's ocean, since craving for existence chains us thoroughly, first search for true renunciation. From cultivating the attitude that this human life is so hard to find and we have no time to spare, preoccupations with this life will cease. By repeatedly contemplating the truth of a karma and samsaric suffering, preoccupations with the next life will cease. Having habituated your mind in this way, when not even an instant of admiration arises for the riches of cyclic existence, and the thought aspiring for liberation arises day and night, at this point true renunciation has arisen. Such renunciation, too, if not sustained by pure awakening mind, will not become a cause of the perfect bliss of unexcelled enlightenment. Therefore, O intelligent ones, generate the excellent awakening mind. They are constantly swept away by four powerful rivers. They are bound tightly with fetters of karma most difficult to escape. They are trapped inside the iron mesh of self-grasping. They are enveloped in thick mists of ignorance. They take birth within cyclic existence that has no end, where they are endlessly tormented by the three sufferings. By reflecting on all your mothers who suffer such conditions, please generate the supreme awakening mind. Without the wisdom realizing the ultimate nature, even if you gain familiarity with renunciation and awakening mind, you will not be able to cut the root of samsaric existence. Strive then in the means of realizing dependent origination. When with respect to all phenomena of samsara and nirvana, you can see that causes and effects never deceive their laws, and when you dissolve the focus of objectification, you enter the path that pleases the Buddhas. As long as the two understandings of appearance, which is undeceiving dependent origination, and emptiness devoid of all these, remain separate, you will not have realized the intent of the sage. However, when not in alternation but all at once, the instant you see that dependent origination is undeceiving, the entire object of grasping at certainty is dismantled, then your analysis of the view has fully matured. Furthermore, when appearance dispels the extreme of existence and emptiness dispels the extreme of non-existence, and you understand how emptiness arises as cause and effect, you will never be captivated by views grasping at extremes. Once you have understood as they are the essentials of the three principal aspects of the path, O son, seek solitude, and by enhancing your power of perseverance, swiftly accomplish your ultimate aim. The foundation of all excellence. Having well understood that the kind master is the foundation of all excellence, and that following him correctly is the root of the path, bless me that I may rely on him with deep respect and repeated effort. Now that for once I have a favorable life form with freedom, knowing how very difficult it is to attain and its great potential, bless me that the thought to take full advantage of it day and night may be born in me continuously. May I remember how death quickly puts an end to life, as fragile as a bubble on the water's surface, and how after death, black and white karma follow as our shadows follow our body. Having attained a firm understanding of this, bless me that I may always be careful to abstain from even the slightest ill deeds and to acquire a complete store of virtue. When indulged in samsaric pleasures, causes dissatisfaction and induce suffering, having understood their drawbacks and their unreliability, bless me that I may strongly aspire to liberation's bliss. With great watchfulness, conscientiousness, and remembrance drawn from that pure aspiration, bless me to make the vows of personal liberation the core of my practice, for they are the very root of the teaching. Having seen that, like myself, all beings, my mothers, have fallen in the ocean of cyclic existence, bless me that I may cultivate the supreme spirit of enlightenment and take full responsibility for freeing all sentient beings. The spirit of enlightenment alone cannot lead to Buddhahood unless one trains in the three ethics. Bless me to truly understand this and to practice the Bodhisattva vows with great enthusiasm. Bless me that by quieting attraction to wrong objects and correctly analyzing the ultimate truth, I may quickly realize the path that unites meditative serenity and special insight. Once by training in the common path, I have become a suitable vessel for the vehicle supreme amongst all vehicles. Bless me that I may easily enter the fortunate one's excellent gateway to the Vajrayana. Then, when absolutely certain that keeping the vows and commitments pure is the basis of achieving the two kinds of realizations, bless me that I may guard them with my life. Having correctly understood the key points of the two stages, the heart of Tantra, bless me that I may practice them energetically without ever neglecting 4-session yoga according to my master's instructions, so that the spiritual masters who thus show the good path and the Dharma friends who practice correctly may live long, and that all inner and outer obstacles be completely subdued. I pray for you to bless me. In all my lives, may I never be parted from my perfect masters, and may I practice the glorious Dharma. Once I have fully achieved the good qualities of the paths and levels, may I realize the state of Vajradhara. So, thank you. So, also, I have had the good fortune of receiving these two transmissions from, of course, His Holiness, from His Holiness, and from the late Kyabje Zong Rinpoche. So like this. Okay, so now it is 4 o'clock, and maybe we can have some interaction. This is, I think, this is what I enjoy the most. When I'm asked to go here and there and talk like this, this is what I like the most. When it is time for question and answers, and not only question and answers, but also if you have something to share, it can be anything. Please feel free to do so. So our interaction. This is, I think, the most important thing. So shall we start? And may I remind us that so the questions need not to be from what I said in the last few minutes. It doesn't have to come from that. It can be related to yesterday or day before yesterday's, or it can also be an unrelated question. So please feel free to ask practically anything, like literally anything, right? It's almost like I'm the man with all the answers, right?
Okay, Tom, you go next, because second floor has 3 questions already.
Oh.
Question 1, what is the difference, Rinpoche, between unwavering faith and having no doubts? isn't one a logical progression that one includes or leads to the other?
Yes. This is from upstairs?
Yes, upstairs.
Tebe chirmi doba, shiraki temi zombas. So, if I'm not wrong in my understanding, then unwavering faith and not having no doubts, these two, similar they may be, but actually someone could have, let us say, no doubts, in currently they could have no doubts in their practice, right? But that doesn't mean that they have unwavering faith, right? So if there is unwavering faith, then maybe there shouldn't be any doubts. But actually, the Tibetan word is something more like not just having no doubts, but no doubts by way of analyzing, right? So someone could have a very strong faith, but maybe they lack the wisdom, So if the person is then sort of inquired about such and such practice, if one sort of, takes an inquisitive approach, then the person could then develop some doubts, right? Even though before it is almost as if the person had really a strong faith, right? So like this, then I think there is a little difference between having a strong faith and then having no doubts, even by having no doubts as a result of wisdom, So one could have a strong faith, but not having the wisdom to back that up, right? Not having like the knowledge to back that up. So therefore, we have both, not only unwavering faith, but also having no doubts as a result of having knowledge, as a result of wisdom. So like this, I think. Yeah. And then, on the other hand, someone could have no doubts because they have a very good knowledge, a good wisdom of the said subject, of the said practice, but then they might not have much faith for themselves, They might not have much faith coming. It's more like it's coming more from the brain, more from the head, but not so much from the heart. So then it could be either, right? So some could have a very strong, unwavering faith, but then that faith may not necessarily be backed up by wisdom, while others might have much knowledge, wisdom, but then that may not necessarily result in faith, right? So this is why we have to this is why both of these are counted, separately. Yeah.
Rinpoche, the second question from another devotee on level 2. How are dreams altered by the practice of Tantra?
Generally speaking, dreams can be altered by our thoughts, right? I mean, obviously there's a connection between, dreams and maybe the preceding days, what sort of experiences we went through, or what thoughts we had. They could they could have a say in what kind of dreams we may have, right? Done that night or a few nights after, there could be connections. So generally it's like that, and also, in I think like how some bodhisattvas, when they practice, then when they reach some levels, then they see these signs in their dreams, not, also in their dreams, of course, not only in their dreams, but then they get these signs, right? So this is possible even on a non-tantric level also. But then in Tantra, then I'm sure these practices can also alter, can affect and alter one's dreams. As we say, especially perhaps with the illusory body, then I think there is a connection with like the dream body, like that. So if you think like this, then I think definitely there's a connection, and how sometimes we can use our sleep or dream as like a substitute for the intermediate state, and when we bring that into the practice, then definitely this affects our sleep state or our dream state as well, right? So like this, I think there are some connections. Okay.
Rinpoche, thank you for coming to Singapore and give us the teaching. My question is that when you're experiencing the dying process, so if you miss your Dharmakaya state, then you go, for one person who is going to Pato, then what would be a very good way for him to pray for good rebirth, praying to his guru, idam, or what should one prepare for his dying process?
Could you, yes, could you, again, yeah.
Okay. When one is experiencing the dying process.
Oh, the dying process.
Yeah, dying process.
Oh,
so
the dying process.
Dying
right.
process. Yeah.
Right.
So if the person fail to recognize the Dharmakaya state, that means he is not able to recognize his ultimate nature. Then, according to a lot of texts, then he probably will go into a Bado stage. And during the Bado stage itself, what would be more reliable for the person to prepare for the Bado stage? Is it praying to his idam or praying to his guru, or what is a better way then?
So, I think to start in the Bado stage would be very difficult, right? So one has to start before that, and if you are going to start preparing at the time of death, then again I think it is too late. So this is why we have to, we have to do the meditations, we have to do the practice, starting from now, when we have the time and our mind is more relaxed. Because at the time of death, if one has to start, beginning, then I think once the state of the mind is not ideal, because there's maybe too much attachment or too much fear, the mind is not so calm. So we should always sort of prepare for this when our mind is calm, and when we have some time, So this is why, engaging in the what we call the generation stage is so important, it's so important, and to go through these visualizations, going through the dissolution process, sort of enacting that, right now. This is exactly the purpose of that practice, right? So that one is then prepared at the time of death, and also during the intermediate state as well, because we have to sort of habituate ourselves. If we do not do this, then it's too late, because if it is something that we don't do on a daily basis, then how can we expect ourselves to be sort of ready for that in those, what's the word? Excuse me? In those circumstances, or I was trying to think. Haha, now this is strange. I can think in Tibetan, but not in English. So like the need of the hour, something like that, right? The need of the hour, when it's really important, if it is not something that you have sort of gotten used to, normally, then you cannot sort of be prepared for that in the need of the hour, right? So this is why, excuse me? Hour of the need? Oh, hour of the need? Oh. What? When it is pertinent. Oh. Yes? Any other words? Excuse me? Yes, that's right. In the crucial moment. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Yes. So, if we are not prepared, if we do not prepare ourselves, and if we do not sort of go and visualize this dissolution process, normally, if we do not sort of make that a part of our daily practice, then in the crucial moment, then we would not be able to, visualize as such, right? So, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Crucial moment. I won't forget that, that was the crucial moment. Yeah. Yes.
Rinpoche, the third question from second floor. The friends on second floor are getting very enthusiastic. So they're all hiding over on the second floor. So the third question is, can Rinpoche please explain conventional and ultimate bodhicitta as opposed to uncontrived and contrived bodhicitta? Are they synonymous, or are there any differences?
Oh, good question. Now, I'm looking at the camera,
Yeah, they
I'm
second
looking
floor.
at the camera. Yes. Yeah. Contrived and non-contrived, right? So I think this word contrived bodhicitta and non-contrived bodhicitta is explained only in the context of conventional bodhicitta, right? So this is, in other words, spontaneous bodhicitta and non-spontaneous bodhicitta, right? So this is usually referring to conventional bodhicitta, not in the case of ultimate bodhicitta, but only in the context of conventional bodhicitta. So right now, if we try to, if we try to generate conventional bodhicitta, then we are somewhat limited. It's not spontaneous. We have to sort of push ourselves, right? So this is what we call contrived, I think, right? Contrived bodhicitta. And with effort, with habituation, partly why our bodhicitta is not spontaneous is because our compassion is not spontaneous, right? This is the main reason. If compassion is spontaneous, then bodhicitta will also be spontaneous. The steps from, when we have the 7 cause and effect, when we have that, the 7 causes, the 7 cause and effect tradition, from step number 5 to 6 and 7, I think it doesn't take so much. Once you come to that level of spontaneous compassion, then this, gives rise to this intention or resolve, wholehearted resolve, or the correct resolve, or altruistic intention, the altruistic thought, which in turn then gives rise to bodhicitta, right? So these 3, then compassion is crucial, is the most important one of all of the 6 causes. So once the compassion is spontaneous, and then gradually bodhicitta then becomes spontaneous. So it then goes from contrived to a non-contrived state, right? It is spontaneous. So it's like that, when we use this term contrived bodhicitta and non-contrived, it's in the context of conventional bodhicitta. Whereas in the ultimate bodhicitta, we do not use these 2 words. These 2 words usually are only used in the context of the method, but not in the context of wisdom, because for the wisdom, we don't talk of contrived or non-contrived. You either know it or you don't know it, right? That's it, right? But with bodhicitta, first you have to go from a contrived state to a non-contrived state, right? You have to sort of gradually build that up, right? So that's that, yeah. So thank you.
Rinpoche, I have a question asked. This is a conversation between Drontiompa and Atisha, when Atisha was invited to Tibet. Drontiompa asked Atisha, although there are many who accomplish in meditation here in Tibet, why hasn't they gained any special good qualities? Atisha answered, his reply was, all the good qualities of the Mahayana, whether great or small, are all generated independent upon the Guru. Yet you Tibetans don't have anything other than ordinary perceptions of your Gurus. So how can you generate realizations? My question is, what is this Guru? The way we perceive our Guru and in our practice, how should we go about?
So the question was, what was
we see this Guru and how we perceive the Guru in our practice to be successful, to have fruitfulness in the practice.
Okay. So I think the great Atisha was referring to, of course, Guru devotion. Guru devotion. So Guru devotion, as Tirumji was mentioning, the foundation of all excellence, right, is the Guru, right? The Guru is the foundation of all good qualities. So, Guru devotion is the root of the path, right? Following him correctly is the root of the path. So, without Guru devotion, then no realizations will be realized. No realizations will be experienced, right? But having said that, nowadays, I think we have to be very careful. Sometimes, as someone who is, sitting on this throne, and then sort of facing the audience and talking, if I'm not careful, if I emphasize Guru devotion, then it might come off as sort of saying, I'm the Guru, you have to be devoted to me. There is that risk. So I think we all have to be very careful when it comes to the subject of Guru devotion, right? Just because you attend a teaching, you attend a lecture, a program, it doesn't matter how you term it, just because you're here, that in no way does it mean that you have to take the person doing the talking as your guru. It is entirely up to the student, It is by only his or her choice that the person becomes your guru. The impetus is really on the student, If the student takes on the person as a spiritual guide, then that has started that guru-disciple relation, right? You don't need to sort of make that a formal, there's no need for formal requests, nor is it's not a formality. So just because you're here doesn't mean you have sort of activated that relationship. No, it doesn't, not at all. And then, as His Holiness would say, that before we start this relation, the guru and the disciple relation, one has to sort of ideally know the person, get to know the person, his or her behavior, their thinking, and you have to think about whether it's almost like whether the two of you can be compatible, This is important, how the person's presentation of the paths, whether, to see whether they are free of errors or not, and most importantly, whether the person himself or herself is indeed following that path, is following what he or her is preaching, This is important that you analyze, you sort of, as His Holiness jokingly says, you have to spy on the person, you have to sort of spy on the person to see whether the person is genuine or not. This is very important. Otherwise, if people are too quick to sort of just jump to conclusions and then decide, that this person is indeed going to be their guru, and having come across texts that talk about the importance of guru devotion, then they have this understanding that they have to really take the person's wishes, or that they have to fulfill their wishes or follow whatever they say, whatever they order, and all of those things, then people like this, people get much misunderstanding, much misconceptions, and this just opens the door for problems within that relation, within the guru-student relation, the guru-disciple relations, right? So this is why it is important that we all have to be very careful when choosing our gurus. Whatever you do, don't make decisions out of haste. Don't do that, and take your time. That's important. And I think it is good to first build a relationship with a person. And once you get to know the person and you know that the person is genuine in his or her motivation is so important. And then I think you can then sort of work on there. You can sort of work from there. You can then sort of carry from there. So like this. And then the danger for quickly coming to this kind of decisions is that then sometimes one might not necessarily meet the right guru, right? And then there might be complications down the road. And then one day, the person you have held in such high esteem, after a few years, then that same person is no more the same person. One might find oneself being very critical and saying negative things about that same person that one had so much high expectations from, or much faith in the first place, right? So we have to be very careful because of that problem. Now, if you are if you have never heard of His Holiness and you just sort of quickly jump into this conclusion and say, he's going to be my guru, of course there's no problem there, right? There's no problem at all if you quickly come to this conclusion and say, His Holiness the Dalai Lama is the person, is my guru. If you quickly, no matter how quick your decision is, in that case, I can guarantee you there will be no problems, right? or any other, genuine lamas, if you quickly come to a conclusion, of course, there is really no risks involved. There is no dangers, right? But in a way, this Lama market, the Lama market, it's so open, it's so open, and we don't have like QC, quality control, right? We don't have that. It's quite difficult to sort of have like a body that sort of then marks people. It's quite difficult, right? And so that sort of complicates things. So the responsibility really falls upon you, one who is the seeker, the seeker. It falls upon you, that responsibility of choosing the right person, right? So I just wanted to share that, yeah. Now, if one has the right guru, then this is what, the great teacher Adisha was referring to. Just imagine if one has has found the right spiritual guide, and then from the spiritual guide, the person then, first, hears the Dharma, and then thinks about the Dharma, and then tries to meditate, practice, and when doubts arise from these practice sessions, then the person can interact with the guru. And if this is the correct guru, then the right guru would have the experience, to back those knowledge up. And this way, then the guru will be able to dispel those doubts, and sort of, essentially, it's only through the guru that one can be inspired, one can be inspired. Because simply having knowledge is not enough. One has to be inspired, right? And only, I think, the spiritual master, the spiritual guide can really inspire the student, right? Maybe from the books, and nowadays, like from the search sites, you can learn many things, but I doubt that, Google can inspire us to practice the Dharma, I very much doubt that. So it's only by relying on a spiritual mentor that we can be inspired to practice the path. So therefore, then, relying on the guru is said to be the root of the path. Relying on the guru is the root of the path.
Rinpoche, okay, so one more question from second floor. After this, there are 4 more. next is David, Marcus, and Michael, and one from the notes over there. So we will see if we have enough time. Otherwise, I'm very sorry, everybody. Okay. Yeah, so the question from the second floor, referring to the foundation of all excellence, verse 12, there is the sentence that says, without ever neglecting 4-session yoga. So this devotee would like to ask Rinpoche, could Rinpoche briefly explain why a 4-session yoga? Is this a secret? Do we need to practice Tantra in order to listen to your answer on why the 4-session yoga?
Oh. So the 4th session, I think with the 4 sessions, then I think we are able to cover the most part of the day, and including some parts of the night. So I think this is, the main reason why we divide into 4 sessions, because with these 4 sessions, then we are able to cover most part of the day and some parts of the night, and also each duration then doesn't become too long or neither too short. So this is, I think, the main reason why we divide into 4 sessions. Okay.
Sorry, David? Where are you? Oh, he's on the 2楼. Okay, sorry. So David is on the 2nd floor. David's question is, on the essence of the 84,000 volumes of Buddha's teachings, are these all applicable to all sentient beings of the 6 realms? If yes, how are these teachings spread in the other realms, in particular the 3 lower realms? If no, then why are the Buddha's teachings not made available to all the other realms?
I think, in this, in the wheel of, excuse me. First, maybe you could translate the question. Yeah. If you look, I think in some paintings, some images of the wheel of existence, the cyclic wheel of cyclic existence. For each realm, there is an image of a Buddha, giving teachings in each realms. So I think in each realm it is possible, but in the other realms, of course, then due to perhaps the mental disposition of the beings there, then maybe the Buddha would give, teachings that would sort of relate to their mental disposition, right? So there might be differences there, yeah. And then the essence is, of course, to overcome suffering, So the essence of Buddha's teaching, the purpose of that is obviously in order to overcome suffering. So for each beings, according to their mental disposition, their capacity, then the Buddha's teachings apply like this. Yes, please.
Tashitali, Rinpoche. This is a question for tantric newbies. That means they have not gone into tantric practice yet. So basically, how do you actually choose tantric practice when you want to start? And is it by yourself, your own dreams, or is it by your guru that will point you the right way? Yes, this is the first question. Second question would be, on behalf of some of my friends, that I want to ask whether Rinpoche will be so kindly to initiate tantric practice for some of us. Thank you.
So engaging on the tantric path is that once one receives the initiation, then one may proceed with the sadhana. So as mentioned in the sadhana, then one has to do the relevant visualizations, and first, of course, beginning with the refuge and mind generation like this, the four immeasurables like this. One has to start, and then one has to then, as it is mentioned in the sadhana, then do the visualizations like this. Yes, so it doesn't. So there's really no formality there. It is not that one needs to be in the presence of one's guru, or one has to be in the presence of companions, or you can do it with people or alone. Yes, but the main thing is to, be faithful, to the sadhana. This is important, and one's visualization should again accord with the sadhana, and there's really no need for asking too many questions or like going into the great details of the visualizations. As far as your visualization accords with the sadhana, that's fine. You don't. Some people sometimes they ask many questions, like so many details, that just seems to sort of complicate things. So in the sadhana, whatever is relevant is contained, and if one follows that, then that is more than enough, right? So this visualization should be fairly simple, and to keep it simple, I think is very important. And yes, like this. And then for the second question, yes. Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, Rinpoche. Just now you mentioned about when you were talking about the bodhicitta, ultimate and the conventional bodhicitta. So perhaps you can also help to explain on the ultimate bodhicitta. Why is wisdom also called ultimate bodhicitta? Is there a reason why it's called ultimate bodhicitta? Thank you.
Ultimate bodhicitta, I think, is this term is used because ultimate bodhicitta, its object of apprehension is ultimate nature. Therefore, then the name of the object is then given to the subjective experience, right? So like this, yeah. So in other words, ultimate bodhicitta is not an ultimate truth, but it is actually a conventional truth, right? Ultimate bodhicitta itself is not ultimate truth, it is conventional truth. So in the case of the two truths, it is actually a conventional truth, not an ultimate truth. But because its object of apprehension, which is emptiness, is ultimate nature, therefore it is simply called ultimate bodhicitta. Yes, so just to simplify, then your question was, why is it called ultimate bodhicitta? It is only called ultimate bodhicitta because the object that it apprehends is ultimate nature. Therefore, yes, that knowledge of ultimate nature is simply called ultimate bodhicitta. Yeah. And I think there's... Was there one more question?
One more question from Mui, but she's too shy. So Mui would like to ask, I think it's important, it's good. Merit is something that is mentioned that we need. Merit, yeah. So Rinpoche, could you kindly explain how should we view merit making as something that not something that we are attached to? And how do we view merit making as with the correct view of emptiness? And is merit accumulated by the action of one's own doing, or is it something beyond? How do we interpret merit and the right concept of merit? Thank you, Rinpoche.
So, merit as in accumulation of merit and accumulation of wisdom, then those two are differentiated from the viewpoint of whether one results, by the result, they are differentiated by the result. So the primary result of accumulation of merit would be the Rupakaya, the Rupakaya, and the primary result of, or fruit of the wisdom would be Dharmakaya, right? So those are differentiated from the results point of view, right? From the side of the result, from the resultant stage. Then generally speaking, when we say merit, then we know, like for example, like we say, if we prostrate, we are creating merit, right? So again, it has to do with some of it has to do with the motivation. So in order to attain Buddhahood, if we make prostrations, then this is contributing towards our achieving Rupakaya. Therefore, we call it merit, right? So like this. So, in other words, the method aspect of the path are considered accumulation of merit, and the wisdom aspect of the path is considered accumulation of primordial wisdom, right? So like this, yes. And creating merit is again considered very important, even in the context of realizing emptiness. One might think, oh, emptiness is something, it just takes much like intellectual awareness or some intellectual aspect. As long as you have the intellect for emptiness, you would know emptiness, right? But it's not simply that. It's not simply enough that one's intellect needs to be backed again by merit. We say merit. So it's almost like as in meritocracy. What is this word? Meritocracy? Meritocracy. 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 Oh, meritocracy. Meritocracy, right? So meritocracy means that you earn it, right? You earn it. It's not because of who you are, but what you have done out of your merits. Therefore, you earn this place or something like that. So it's similar. If you do all sort of take these hardships in order to realize emptiness, then in a way you then deserve to understand emptiness, right? But without creating those merits, then you don't deserve to actually know emptiness, right? So this is like, in a way, a concept of the merit system, merit. I think we can also understand it in more conventional terms, and I think we can also try to then sort of connect that to our path, like this, yeah. Was there any question left? Yes, one question. Okay, the final question. Yes, final question.
Thank you, Rinpoche, for remembering. Okay, I have a question for people, especially myself inclusive, who have already taken vows, like any vows, like refuge vows, bodhisattva vows, and tantric vows. I'm just wondering, for us, right? If we keep our vows purely, then of course we will not go to the Vajra house. Okay, so my question is really that I know that to keep our vows purely, we have to remember the vows, and then we have to be mindful of actions and try not to break our vows. My question is really, what is a practical way to improve our way of remembering these many vows, as well as how to put this into practice? Thank you.
So I think like a good reference point would always be, like a good measures would always be, to think about the purpose of why we took those vows in the first place. So in the case of refuge vows, then obviously the goal is so that we can take refuge, or we can continue taking refuge, right? So as long as you concentrate on taking refuge properly, then one needs not really have to worry so much about breaking those vows, right? And in the case of Bodhisattva vows, for example, like the 18 root downfalls, and is it the 42 infractions? 46 infractions. Why do they come? Why do they materialize? As a result of neglecting one's bodhicitta. Most of them come as a result of not sort of being mindful of bodhicitta. So for that, again, as long as one can continue to, if one can sustain, the practice of bodhicitta daily, then one does not have to worry about breaking those vows, right? So like this, I think this is how this is the approach we should take, and not really worry so much about not breaking those vows, but rather try to take this approach of upholding and sustaining bodhicitta, refuge, etc. like this. So, yeah, thank you.